Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda. I'm going to try and make it through this video. It's not been a good time, as we all know. I'm going to start this, couple of reasons, couple things I need to say at the start. First of all, in the eye of a hurricane, there is silence. That's where I am right now. The roofers are on a lunch break, so I'm hoping I can get this video done while they're still on lunch. Otherwise, it's going to be really, even noisier than usual. I have no control if my husband decides to come downstairs and start cooking, but all. Second of all, I talk about this more in my mid-month book bash vlog, which you will see next Thursday. But since the election, there's been a lot of kind of stuff going around about whether or not people on their booktube channels, bookstagram accounts, book talk accounts, any of those should be political. And I'm going to come right out here and say that reading is political, life is political, and politics are going to happen. And if that's not your thing, you don't have to watch my channel. And I think I'm going to talk about booktube here. Every booktube creator has the right to be as political or not as they choose to be on their channels. Reading is political, and politics affected by reading this week. And I will only talk about it in terms of that, although I will tell you there's a lot more about it in my, you'll see in my mid-month book bash. So if that's not your thing, it's nice knowing you. You don't need to announce that you're leaving. I don't care if you announce if you're leaving, but I'll let you know that's really not a good look for you. But there you go. Another thing is yeah, I'm just gonna leave it there, I guess. So yeah, this has not been a great week for the nation, the United States, or the world. I don't know what happened. I don't understand it at all. And people have asked me if I'm okay. I am not. I am not crying all the time anymore. I am at the point now where I am listening to one of the many cast albums of Les Misérables over and over and over again. So we'll talk more about that in a bit too. Yes, yeah. So yeah, I'm pissed. I am confused. I have family members I am not talking to at the moment because I know how they voted and I don't understand it. They voted very directly against their own best interests, which I don't understand. I mean, I understand it because I do and I don't understand it, but just the way we are. I need space right now. So anyway, that's been that week. So besides that whole shite storm, roofing, my cat is having a nervous breakdown. She's upstairs right now, just like, it's silent, but she won't leave our bedroom because that's like her safe space. So she just sits there. Oh, it's so sad. But I could give her gabapentin, but I think that might even be worse for her. I don't know, because this is going to be tomorrow too. So, or tomorrow, today, as you see it, a Saturday too. So I don't know, but that's happening. But the reason it's happening is because we're actually having a couple very nice fall days here in Oregon. And they needed to do it when it wasn't raining. It was supposed to be done in October and the weather didn't cooperate. So it's getting done now. As for reading, let me actually check the dates on this super quick here. I finished 4 books this week, and 2 of which were finished before the election and 2 were finished after. And that really affected my reading. Actually, before I get to what I have finished, I want to show you something that I am reading right now, which is this. I started this on November 1st for Nonfiction November. It's my Shot book. It's about the lead up to the Civil War. This all of a sudden became a very hard book to read. It really did. It's like very uncomfortable to read now. I am still reading it. I am taking it very slowly though. So I know that there's other people reading this book now, and I'd be interested to know how you are feeling reading this book. So let me know below. But I'm still reading that. But let me get to what I did finish. As I said, I finished 2 books. I finished 2 books before the election and 2 books after. So the first book that I finished before the election was The Guncle by Stephen Rowley. And I know everyone's read this book. I did a double buddy read of it. So I did a buddy read with Angela at Andy Hart's Books, and Kim is going to try and catch up with us, Kim at Kim's Book Life. And then I also did a buddy read with my friends Karen and Kim on Storygraph. So I did a double buddy read of this. Kind of wish I'd finished it after the election just because it's a very comforting book. I did really enjoy this book. Not perfect. There were some things like basically the older sister in the book that I was like, what's going on here? But I enjoyed it. This is the second Stephen Rowley book I've read. The first one was Lily and the Octopus, which made me ugly cry. If you are dealing with any kind of grief or are an animal lover, that is a hard book, just let you know. This one is, I mean, it does deal with some pretty, harder subjects, but it does it with humor and it handles it really well. I am interested in reading The Guncle Abroad. That feels like a very summary book, so I probably won't read it right away, but I did like this. I did have to laugh because the main character's name is Patrick and my husband's name is Patrick. And at one point they made some comment about not being called Pat because that sounded too straight and my husband goes by Pat. So I thought that was just funny. But yeah, like everybody else, I recommend this book. The second book I finished, and I want to be careful about how I talk about this because I know a lot of people who want to read this book want to go in as blind as possible. But I read The Grey Wolf by Louise Penny, which is number 19 in the Three Pines / Armand Gamache series. So I'm going to timestamp where I'm talking about books on here. And if you'd like to skip to the next one, go right ahead because I'm not going to spoil anything, but I'm going to give some sort of general things around the book. And if you really don't want that kind of information, they aren't spoilers. You can feel free to skip it. What this book is not a mystery. This book is a thriller. And I think that is important knowing. It's a thriller with kind of a mystery pace. Louise Penny can write thrillers. State of Terror, which is the book that she wrote with Hillary Clinton. I think Hillary Clinton kind of came up with the story and Louise Penny wrote it, but that's like a thriller, straight up thriller. And this is also a thriller. Even though I finished it before the election, it does deal with some domestic terrorism. That's in the synopsis. That's not a spoiler. So that was a little weird to read. I know this is getting kind of mixed from what I've seen other people talking about, sort of mixed response. I liked it. Not my favorite though. It was an enjoyable read. It is, there's something I want to say about it, which might be kind of a spoiler. So I'm going to put spoiler here and you can kind of like mute me until I finish. It's not really a spoiler, but it's a heads up for something that happens at the end of the book. Okay. Right there. Spoiler. This book ends in a cliffhanger. It's really part of a duology. Her next book is called The Black Wolf, and that kind of continues the story. You don't get a full resolution to this. End of spoiler. And if you chose, you can unmute me if you want to hear that. So, knowing that going in. Some people do want to know that, some people don't, so it's up to you. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I've liked there's one of the Louise Penny books that I didn't feel really worked for me, and that was All the Devils Are Here. And this one falls under the umbrella of it worked for me. It just isn't my favorite. My favorite is still A World of Curiosities. So there you go. I wish, I won't say anything more because I don't want it to be a spoiler. There you go. And now we're getting to books that I finished after the election. So this book I've been reading for a very long time. I've been reading since January 1st, and I had not planned to finish it until December 30th. But I finished it on November 6th, and that book is this baby. I did not read this copy. I have an ebook copy of it. This is my shelf copy that I had to get from Thrift Books, and it's got like labels on here, which I don't really love, but I wanted this particular copy and couldn't find it anywhere. This is a reread for me. I read it when I was in high school. So I haven't read it for many, many years, for like 30 years, over 30 years. And so I reread it and I really liked the very slow and steady read. It feels very weird right now to not be reading this every day. It does. But anyway, it was a reread. So there was nothing that really surprised me as far as plot-wise in it. I did enjoy it much, much more this time. And I chalk that up to two things. One, this is this translation is by Christine Doniger. This is an excellent translation. I'm not sure who did the translation that I read, but it was not as good as this. So there's that. But also, I'm just an older person. I'm a more mature person now, so I came to this book with that maturity that I didn't have when I was in high school. So there's that. Again, this is time-stamped. You can skip ahead if you want. This is one of those things, like, I guess it's kind of a spoiler, but most people know the story. I'm going to talk about it in terms of the musical. So if you are someone who doesn't know, just skip ahead. Or if you don't know but you don't care, that's fine too. Whatever. You have the okay now. Obviously, even though the musical is over 3 hours long, a lot was trimmed from this, but it is really a masterclass on how to do an effective adaptation. And I really was taken with that this time. Now, I did recently see Les Misérables again this past, I think, December. Yeah, it was December. Came through town. We went to see it. I took my daughter to see it for the first time. And this is the first time I've seen the new production of it, which I don't like as much as the original production, but that's okay. Staging-wise, there's some issues with it. But this copy came from the New York Public Library. Just so you know, FYI. Sorry. Obviously, they had to streamline things. But the way that they were able to tell that story in a very different format, in a very streamlined way, and still get the essence of the story out as clearly as it did, and match it as well as it does in here, is amazing. Some changes. Obviously, all the characters are better fleshed out in this book. Just because, dude, it's 1,300 pages of text. Like, the book itself is longer than that, but the text ends on page 1304. So we're good. The big difference, the really striking difference in this book is, to me, is the character of Javert. In the musical, Javert is, I don't really want to say he's a villain, because he's not really a villain, but he is very much an antagonist. You are supposed to, it is very clear in the book, very clear in the musical, you root for Jean Valjean and you root against Javert. They're set up in opposition with each other. It's much more nuanced in the book. Javert isn't that sort of character. It's not like he has this burning urge to follow Jean Valjean and bring him to justice that he seems to have in the musical. That makes for great stage production. So I am not begrudging the musical for doing this. That was a smart move on their part, because but in the book, it's different. In the book, Javert is someone who believes in the law. Valjean is someone who didn't follow the law. And it's his job to apprehend him. That's like where it went. And it was very interesting to see that difference. Now, this kind of leads to what happens to Javert, which is the same thing that happens in the musical, but the feeling is so much more different. In the musical, it is a very dramatic piece, and it is just a major moment, right? It's not in the book. It's just kind of like, okay, well, it's very thought out, and which makes perfect sense with the way the character is presented in the book. And I believe in the message that Victor Hugo was trying to say through that character. But in the musical, that's not A, not going to be very interesting, and B, because it's a musical and because they've streamed it down, they changed that character a bit, and that's perfectly fine because they stayed true to the essence of the story. And the character that's in the musical needs a big dramatic ending, and it got it. Other changes. Cosette is definitely spunkier in the book. She's spunkier in the newer production of Les Misérables. In the original, she was a little bit milquetoast, but she's spunkier in the book. Marius is a little skeevier in the book. He's a little stalkery, and Marius is a little bit of a harder character to deal with. Not in a... He's a conflicted character. I mean, he's idealistic, and then he has to deal with when his idealism is challenged, which is an interesting argument in the book. And so that's there. But because of that, it makes Marius a little bit more of a harder pill to swallow than he is in the musical. It's fine. Just something I noticed. My favorite character, one of my favorite characters in the book isn't even in the musical. And that is Monsieur Gillenormand, who is Marius's grandfather. I love that character, and he's not in the musical, and that's fine. That is fine. It would have been too much in the musical, but I so enjoyed him in this book. Enjoyed it. Loved it. So now, as I said, my plan was to finish reading this on December 30th to December 31st, and I finished it on November 6th, right? So here's what happened. This book has 365 chapters. If you look at actually chapters, it's kind of like they have what they call chapters, we would call sections, but then there's chapters within it, but it's 365, right? So it's perfect for a year-long read. Some of those chapters, though, are very, very short. And I was starting to get a little frustrated when I would read for 90 seconds a day. I'd be like, So I told myself in those cases, if I finish a chapter in less than 5 minutes, I can read the next chapter. Not all the chapters are super short, but I don't think there was a single chapter that took me more than half an hour to read. And probably most chapters probably took me about 10 minutes to read, but there were some short ones. And so the short ones I would read ahead to the next one, which put me ahead. So I was almost a month ahead, or I was like a month and a half ahead by the time I got to election day. Well, then election day happened and that whole dumpster fire lit. And then I looked at my reading and I realized that there wasn't a lot of what I was reading that was super comforting. I had this going, and then I had a book that we'll talk about next. But this book was my comfort book. So on November 6th, I just pushed through and finished this book. That's why I finished it. So Les Mis. If you have never seen the musical Les Misérables, I highly recommend it. You can go see. There's touring productions everywhere. Comes through town, go see it. It's worth it. The new production, as I said, is not my favorite. It's harder to follow. And I noticed this with my daughter, because I took my daughter the last time to see it. And so she didn't know the story. In the original production, it's a very sparse set. And they flash up on the screen where they are in time, in both time and place. We're here in 1815 and we're here in 1832. So you can very clearly see the passage of time, right? They don't do that in the new production. And fortunately, we were kind of a little bit off to the side. And they had one of those little screens that have like the dialogue kind of going through it. So my daughter was able to see that, but she was really confused for the first part. Like, what is going on here? And I understand that. Also, the original production, because it was such a sparse set, you could see really well from pretty much any seat. The new production has more of what I would call an opera set, where the stage is kind of smaller. And so if you're on the side, you don't see as well. I'm not as much a fan. I like the original production better, but it is still 100% worth seeing. Now the movie. Now here we go with the movie. Now, by the way, if you can't see it, you might have access to one of the concert productions. That's like a good next step. Go see a concert production. There's a 10th anniversary. There's a 25th anniversary. The recording I'm listening to now is the 2020 Arena show, which I have a little bit of an issue with, but we'll get to that. Those are all fine. Probably of those, I would recommend the 10th anniversary production. I think that has the strongest cast across the board. So there's that. Then there's also the movie. There are things about the movie I really like, and there's things about the movie I really don't like. I cannot forgive that movie for Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe plays Javert. He has no business whatsoever playing Javert. None whatsoever. That is a very hard part to sing, and yes, he has a rock band. And yes, he played Frankenfurter when he was younger, but no, he does not have the chops for it, and he does not play it well, which is surprising because no matter what you think of Russell Crowe's singing voice, and I am someone who actually saw him in concert once, he is generally a good actor, and he was not a good actor in this. There's some very great performances in it. Samantha Barks, who actually was in the London production, plays Eponine. Fantastic. Helena Bonham Carter as Madame Thénardier. Fantastic. Eddie Redmayne was surprisingly good, even though his whole face vibrates when he sings. If you watch it, he's like, ah. It's really weird. I really liked Amanda Seyfried as Cosette. But then there are performances that don't work as well. I know everyone was Anne Hathaway. She was fine, but she wasn't standout to me. And people have feelings about Anne Hathaway. I have nothing against her as an actress. I just didn't think she was a standout in that role. Hugh Jackman is a fantastic actor, and he is a fantastic singer, but he has the wrong voice for Valjean. Valjean needs a certain voice, and he does not have it. And it made Valjean's big number, Bring Him Home, actually very unpleasant for me to listen to. So, I'm kind of, but I loved the ending of that movie, because if you see the musical at the ending, when spoilers, Jean Valjean dies, then Eponine and Fantine are there, and I'm always here going, why is Eponine there? He met her once. Why is she there? In the movie, they switched that out for it's the Bishop of Dean, who's played by Colm Wilkinson, who was the original Jean Valjean, and that makes so much more sense. Plus, the Bishop of Dean is who he sees in the book. So just saying there. I'm kind of iffy on the movie. But yeah, see the musical. And, you know, if you can't see the musical on stage, see a stage production, one of the stage concerts. You can get them from the library. I think if you have a PBS passport, you can get them. Broadway HD has them. You can see them. So anyway, Les Miserables. This is my comfort book. And yes, I am listening to the soundtrack of Les Miserables on repeat right now. My son was complaining about it. Like, why? I liked it better when you were listening to Taylor Swift over and over again. Which, you know, I was doing that before the election. But my daughter wasn't complaining. And then today she wore her Les Mis shirt to school. So I think she's kind of with me on that. Okay. Enough. There went my Shakespeare tin. Okay, so the next book I have to say, and I do have things to say about this book because this is a very interesting book to have read after the election, and that is Hill Women, Finding Family and a Way Forward in the Appalachian Mountains by Cassie Chambers. I buddy read this with Kim at Kim's Book Life. I believe she's still working on it. This, if you've seen my Instagram post, by the way, I've totally, like, after the election, I totally got into Bookstagram again, because I've always been kind of on it. But Threads and Bookstagram and Booktube have been my safe spaces. And I don't even want to go on my own personal Instagram. It's just my Bookstagram. But anyway, I posted about this on there. This is the book, The Hillbilly Elegy by, you know, our little, that guy, should have been. Let me give you the brief synopsis of this book. It's a memoir written by a person who grew up in and near Appalachia, in the poverty of Appalachia. They went on to get an Ivy League education, and then they got into politics, and they're writing about their upbringing. Difference, that's also Hillbilly Elegy. The difference is, A, this is a woman, and two, this book lifts up the Appalachian community. It doesn't throw it under the bus to make herself look good. Hillbilly Elegy is an insulting book. It is insulting. I read that book. It was not yet out in paperback when I read it. So I read it within a year of it being released. And it was insulting then. I didn't know who J.D. Vance was. And it was just insulting. This book is not insulting. Cassie Chambers talks a lot about her family. Now, she does focus on women, but it's not just women in here. Her mother and her, well, especially her mother, we're going to focus a little bit on her mother, kind of was the first one to sort of escape. She was the youngest in the family, and she was able to go to college. So even though that she kind of dropped out of college because she was very young and pregnant, but then she did go back to college and she became a freshman. Her parents are married. Her father was an academic, but he also came from this world as well. So they were ones who kind of escaped. So Cassie Chambers grew up with parents who had sort of, I don't want to say escaped Appalachia, but sort of broke the mold of the poverty that their families had been in. But then Cassie also was very close to her family in Appalachia, and she would spend time because her parents were young and they needed help. She would spend a lot of time with her grandmother, with especially her grandmother and her Aunt Ruth, which also made me laugh because I have an Aunt Ruth. Her Aunt Ruth is awesome. My Aunt Ruth is crazy. But so she was much more in the Appalachian culture than that other guy ever was. So she talks a lot about the poverty. She tells about her family's experience very well. I will say the middle dragged a little bit for me because she talks about this when she goes off to school, then goes off to Yale and Harvard. She gets a law degree. She becomes a lawyer. She comes back and she starts practicing for like a family aide in Louisville. So she's back in Kentucky, and she now is a state senator in the state of Kentucky. So she is, and she was at the end of this book, like the vice chair of the Democratic Party of Kentucky. So also not like that other guy. But that's just that part. And then after that, when she gets back, this book came out in 2020. So chapter 17 is a little hard to read after the election because that is about after the 2016 election and why they voted for 45. And it was hard to read, but it was also very informative. There were some really interesting things I learned in here. More people are registered as Democrats in Kentucky than they are Republicans. That really surprised me. But also, I think she said in here that Kentucky is the state that's worst for the disenfranchised of African-American voters. That's in here. I should have tabbed that so I could pull that out. She knows her facts, and she really does present this in a very balanced and fair, and in a way that actually has love for the place. I don't want to read about a community when the author hates it. You know, this is one where she loves it. So don't read that book. Read this book. There is a part in here where she talks about that book that was set, one county over, that's on the New York Times bestseller, and she's telling her aunt about it, and her aunt's insulted by it. And rightfully so. And I think her aunt's basically just insulted by the title, because I don't think she really read it. But obviously, Cassie Chambers did. Cassie Chambers did have a piece this year in The Atlantic about how bad Vance is for Appalachia. So she knows what she's talking about. I recommend this book if you are open to reading it. There you go. Hill Women by Cassie Chambers. So those are the 4 books that I have finished. Right now, I'm still working through Demon of Unrest. I am reading Sovereign, which is number 3 in the Shard Lake series. That's a nice diversion. And I'm going to start Towards Zero by Agatha Christie. I am hopefully maybe going to start. Oh, my kitty made it downstairs. She got brave and came downstairs, and as soon as she gets brave, they're going to start banging again. I may try to do Othello this weekend. We're going to see. Everything's kind of up in the air now. So other than that, you can go back. On Thursday will be my mid-month book bash, which kind of covers this time. On Tuesday, I'm going to re-record it right now, if I have time before they get back from they start banging again. I'm going to re-record the Joy and Gratitude, booktube Joy and Gratitude tag that Pat at Book Chat with Pat created. I had that ready to go, and it just feels weird. It feels weird putting up a video that was done before the election, so I'm going to do it again. So anyway, that's that for now. I will let you go. Like, subscribe, join my Discord, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.